Hello and welcome to another video of mine. My name is Paulo Moreira and today I decided to remake a video about the Praktica BX20. As you know, this is something that I will do for every single one of the videos that I have already made in the past. The reason for these videos was just a quick demo, a quick presentation of a camera. But people found them interesting and started to send me messages. How do I do this on that camera? How does it work? And now it's stuck. How can I unstuck? How do I... Well, lots of batteries and questions about that. So I will try to give you a more in-depth presentation of the cameras so that I can virtually answer any questions or doubts that you might have. So today I have here the Praktica BX20, which is a camera from Eastern Germany. Do not confuse with Russia, it has nothing to do with it. And being a camera from DDR, Praktica was always scorned at and has not a cult following, but rather the opposite. There is a group of people that can't even stand to hear the name, much less use the cameras. This is a shame because Praktica was one of the very first manufacturers in the world to present an SLR working with 35 millimeters. It was before World War II, before Contax, although the post-war Contax S is somewhat a cousin of Prakticas of the 50s. Now, the BX20 is the replacement of the first generation B series models that you may know: BMS, BCA, BC1, BC3, well, B100, B200, a legion of them. As usual by Praktica, they declined a model in many small variations so that they appear to have a real range, model range, which they, in good truth, didn't have. They just had one model and that's it. Now, the BX20 was born around 1986, I believe, and it's not a radical departure from previous Prakticas, is not a radical departure for photography. By this time, manufacturers offering manual focus cameras, only SLRs, were very few, and Praktica had the honor of dividing this technological, how can I say, delay with Leica, with Contax. With Ricoh, in a way, Yashica, but by this time I think Yashica already had an autofocus camera, so they were in pretty good company. This camera, according to some historians, was destined to have an autofocus version, program modes, etc., but the demise of Eastern Germany, the collapse of Eastern Germany, put a halt to all that, and Praktica would disappear at the end of 2000, I think, or 1999. Well, but that's not of any use to us today because we're here to have a look at this one. So, I like the BX20 because it's really a complete camera. Complete, I mean, it has everything you need to take or make good pictures. Because it is full-featured, meaning that there's nothing lacking. In some cheaper models, there's always something lacking, like the depth of field preview, this or that, or the camera lacks automation. Well, it's not the case here. The BX20 is a compact camera. It's not really small, but it's not big either. It's not unpleasant. Well, they are prettier cameras, I know, but it's far from being horrid. It follows a bit like the Pentax P30 It's all in plastic. There is no leatherette covering the frontal part of the camera, although they still have it on the back. But it's more ergonomic than its predecessors because there's a grip here so that you can grip the camera better. Mind you, some models had really horrid plastics and they squeak and rattle a lot. This is not the case. It's a very solid and put together camera, although this battery door really could have been better designed and built, but this has always been a Praktica plague. In many cameras the battery door is really flimsy. Now, describing the camera, getting back to the external controls of it, it's classically Leiden, so there's really nothing special about it. You have the shutter speed wheel here, and it turns full circle, so it doesn't stop, and it has all the standardized speeds from 1 second to 1,000th of a second, and plus a flash speed, and you see that you have this white dot. You select them by aligning the corresponding speed. The interesting thing about the flash speed is that it is mechanical, so it works without batteries, just like the Nikons. I think the sync here is 1/90th, faster than the Nikons, but it's an SOS speed in case the camera or the batteries die, and you can always take pictures following the rule F11 125. It's not 1/25th, I mean, but it's close. Then you have the green auto position, which means that in this mode the camera is in auto priority mode. You choose the aperture you want and the camera matches the speed. In orange are the numbers, or the letter B, up to 1/5 of a second, 15th of a second, meaning that there is the danger of camera shake and you should use a tripod. And that's wise of Praktica to remind us of that, which is true. And especially with Praktica cameras, because their shutters or mirrors do have a great deal of vibration, so they might vibrate and camera shake can occur more easily than with other cameras. This is your advanced lever. That is pretty smooth after a point, and then bang. It makes no noise, it is smooth, and then you have this clonk at the end. It's a shame. Here you have the hot shoe, and the flash sports a TTL contact for the first time in a Praktica camera. That is the same as the Olympus system, and a flash ready light. This is exposure compensation here. You just lift this button and your ISO is set. You set it the same way. So you press it here on where it says ISO and you choose your ISO. Nothing to see here on top. Up front we have the self-timer, which is mechanical, you know the type, and has two functions. One is being a self-timer, of course, the other is being the depth of field preview. Nice. It's not original, some other manufacturers have this system as well. And here's the exposure lock or memory lock, this button here, which strangely has a sort of a hood, or half of a hood, that prevents you from really reaching the button. It is just as Praktica didn't want us to use it. Really silly, I can't understand why. And here, at the bottom of the camera, you can see the connection for a motor drive that can do almost 4 frames per second, which is nice. It is very, very noisy and emits a really spectacular, unpleasant noise, and it's best to avoid it unless you are into motorized sports or something like that, because otherwise you will scare everybody with that window. Now, inside the camera, you have to open just like any other camera. It's fairly well finished. It's all in metal. The rails are well machined. This is the shutter curtains. The shutter travels vertically. It's been like this since 1969. Praktica was the first manufacturer to dump the horizontally run shutters, cloth, rubberized cloth, whatever, or titanium. So they decided to go for vertical run shutters, and they decided well, because in our days every single shutter focal plane is like this, but it still has the sound. It's not a discrete one. Let me just put the camera into B position so that I may show you. I don't know if you can see it, but there, that thing shining over there, it's the cell that reads off the film, courtesy of Olympus. So let's close the door. And one more thing, there's this shutter lock, which is exactly like you can find in a Leica R. So it's under the shutter speed dial. So if it is on the left, you can use the camera. If it's on the right, it locks the shutter. One of the best things, if not the best thing about the camera, I cannot show you. Well, of course you have guessed it by now. It's the viewfinder. The viewfinder is really for, don't forget this was a cheap camera. It was not intended to compete with any particular Nikon, Canon, Alta, well, perhaps this X100, X300 perhaps, but not Nikon or Canon. And so it's really surprising to see such a nice viewfinder. It covers 96% of the field of view, which is uncommon. A Japanese camera normally covers 90 to 92%. Olympus OM cameras cover 97%, but again, they were not designed to operate in the same market as this one. Besides being big, it is bright, it is really bright, fitted with the 1.4 Panco R here. It really is a first-class viewfinder. With this one, it still is really nice. It's very hard to have an autofocus picture with this viewfinder because it's so clear. Also, it uses you have the normal microprism color and the split image rangefinder, but here it is at 45 degrees, so it breaks, inverted commas, the image like this. And this is good for straight horizontal lines because it's easier to focus. Most people don't like the system. I really like, and I think it's much better than the horizontal one because it covers pretty much everything, being at 45 degrees. Yashica used a similar system, but as far as I know, no Nikon or Canon ever used such a thing. Of course, the screen is not interchangeable, it's fixed. Inside also, this is possibly the world's with the most information in the viewfinder for its price. You have the shutter speeds, you have under and over exposure warnings, you have the apertures which are reflected through this window. Also, the apertures become red when you fire the camera, meaning that the shutter is not cocked, the film is not advanced. That's very neat to remind us to advance the film. On this side of the viewfinder, you can find exposure compensation LED warning, flash ready, and memory lock. So you really have plenty of information here. It's a camera that you don't have to take your eyes from the viewfinder in order to check for what you are doing. So this is pretty neat. And manually speaking, I can only remember, well, there are some cameras, but it reminds me of the Contax that I have, the 137 that also, and the 139 that also have a very informative viewfinder, and not with LCDs or something like that, just plain simple LEDs and reflection mirrors and stuff like that. It's really cool for such an inexpensive and unambitious camera. Speaking of information, you don't have the complete range of speeds. I think it ends at 4 seconds inside or 8 seconds, because the camera is capable of a full 40 seconds of maximum shutter opening, up to 1,000th of a second. So they didn't have the room to put all the speeds, I believe. Now, one of the most interesting things about the Praktica, this one or any bayonet mount Praktica, is that the lens range was small. You don't have many Praktica lenses that you can use. They made a few, but they are not really readily available. Some are hard to find. They made macro lenses, they made wide-angle lenses, telelenses, but some are not really very easy to find. And then they also used the lineup from Carl Zeiss Jena from Eastern Germany, DDR, not the brand engineered ones from Sigma and stuff like that, which is the case here. I chose to present a camera with this lens. This is the old Pankolar 1.850, because when this camera was launched in the brochure, this was the lens that appeared, although this lens was never made available with this camera in B mount. So I have it from another camera. I suppose that they just use it to look good on the brochures, and it does, because it's not a rebadged Pentacon. You just have to look at the reflections of the lens. The coating is different. Also, the lens is bigger. It's all in metal. It focuses from 35 centimeters, and the Pentacon version focus, the last one, from 45 centimeters, and previous ones from the 80s, beginning of the 80s, from 33 centimeters. And optically, of course, this lens is not as the Pentacon 51.8. It is better. Now, speaking of lens, you have to depress here this button, the bayonet release mount, with this red dot. And you can see that the camera features these 3 contacts that are repeated here in the mount. So it's Praktica similar system that transmits electrically or electronically, as we wish, the aperture to the camera. So it simulates the aperture for the meter, so that there is no mechanical linkage between diaphragm and camera. You might think that, oh, that's pretty normal, my DSLR also has that. Yes, but in those days when this was presented, like it is here in 1978, there was no camera that used such an ingenious system. But I'm not here to talk about that today. That will be for another video of another Praktica, the one that made the system available. Now, like I was saying, the lens lineup was pretty limited. You had the Carl Zeiss Jena lenses, but they are very expensive to find. You have the 20mm Flectagon, which is very, very expensive. You have the 35mm, you have 50mm, 1.4, 1.8. You have the small teles, 80mm, 1.8. You have the 135, 180, 2.8. Well, but they are, and the 200, 2.8, but they are very, really expensive. And I don't know if they're worth the money just to try out BX20. So there is a solution, because not a lot of independent manufacturers, third-party manufacturers did lenses for the Praktica B mount, but Praktica, as they were primarily a manufacturer of screw mount cameras, had this adapter that is really cool, because you see it is B mount here, and you can mount it on the camera like that. And now our BX20 is ready for a screw mount M42 lens. In this case the same lens, but the Pancolar 1.850, but in screw mount. The camera still operates in auto priority mode, and although you have to work with closed down diaphragm, or real diaphragm as people normally say, but it's an option that you have if you want to use old lenses, Praktica or non-Praktica. I can, for instance, use the lovely Takumar here with no problem, D50 1.4, which is a very nice lens, and also works very well with the BX20. So the camera is versatile. Most manufacturers that did M42 mount bodies have a similar lens adapter. I'm speaking about Pentax, of course, Yashica, and I think that's about it. Nikon never did any screw mount M42 cameras, neither did Minolta or Canon, so I don't think there are adapters for the FD system. Still, it's good to know that we have the possibility of using old lenses here, old screw mount lenses. Some of them are really very nice, although there is a lot of junk, but you can go for old East German lenses, Russian glass, and that multitude of wonderful Pentax lenses, Chinon, so many Ricoh screw mount lenses, and use it here. So, my friends, this was my not so brief presentation of the Praktica BX20, a camera that is interesting. It was the last major design from Praktica. There was a successor, the BX20S, which was an update, as the name indicates. But as a whole design, new design, this was truly the last Praktica SLR to come from DDR. Nostalgia apart, I think it's a camera. It's nice to use. Shame about the noise and some vibration, but it is very versatile. The metering system is pretty accurate, and it can do lots of things. As far as you don't mind having to focus manually. And in 1986, Praktica, and this is a sort of irony, it comes full circle, Praktica, Contax and Leica were the only ones who were still using manual focus. Well, I'm putting Zenith deliberately out, but from major names, so they were in pretty good company. Contax being a cousin of them, and Leica being a neighbor of them. So I hope you have enjoyed this small, long video about the BX20, a camera that if you happen to buy one at a good price, not for collecting but for using, then don't hesitate, because then if you can get that adapter, you can really have a versatile body. Of course, you can do the same with the Pentax camera, it's true, or with the Yashica camera, it's true, or with the Contax camera, it's true. But to each its own, and this one has its own advantages and charms, like we say. And I quite think it's a camera that is nice to use. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you very soon in another video of mine.